Hello and good day, pre-algebra. We are continuing through our first unit. Today talking about CO2, writing rational numbers. We know what those are now, right? Whole numbers, integers, decimals, fractions, as both decimals and fractions. So this is a really big conversion section here, okay? And why conversion is important is that, different values can be written, the same value can be written differently. Have you ever gone to the store and saw something that was 11/4 dollars? No. If you did, it would be the same thing as 2.75, but money is just something that we write as a decimal. When I open my math-related store where I'm going to sell things like square root beer, I'm going to use fraction prices just to see who's really smart, right? Who really can convert, right? But money, decimal. We could write as a fraction if we wanted to, but we don't. Those of you who are bakers that like to bake, recipe cards usually don't use decimals to show portions of cups things, right? It's like 3/8 of a cup. Could you use 0.375? Would it mean the same thing? Yes. But typically, fractions are used in recipes. But being able to convert back and forth is a good mathematical skill, right? So what does it mean to convert? Yes. It could mean that. Yeah, that's part of conversion. It could mean going from an improper fraction to a mixed number, right? That's conversion also. It could be going from feet to inches or meters to centimeters. Those are all conversions. What does it mean? Yeah. To change, right? To convert means to write a value another way. To write a value another way. To write a value another way. Does the value change? Like when we go from 2.75 to 11/4, did that value change? No, only the way it was written. When we go from 3/8 to 0.375, does the value change? Will your pancakes taste the same if you put 3/8 cups flour or 0.375 cups flour? No, that's not going to change. Oh, yes, they will taste the same, right? The value is the same. It's just written another way. Okay? Kind of like when you simplify a fraction. That's conversion in a sense, in that the value doesn't change, but it's written a different way. So we're going to start by just practicing one you're probably familiar with, converting an integer to fractions and decimals. Give me an integer that you'd like to use. 3. Okay? How do we write an integer like 3 as a decimal? We usually don't, but if we wanted to, how would we do it, Jack?
3.00.
Right. As a decimal, it'd be 3.0. And Jack said 3.00. It really wouldn't matter how many zeros you put after that. It's all going to be the same. But you could add 0.0 there. If we wanted to write the integer 3 as a fraction, how would we write it as a fraction? Griffin?
You could say like 12/4.
We could write it as 12/4. Okay. How else could we write it? Kind of in the simplest form, perhaps. Okay. Camille? I mean, 12/4 isn't wrong, but we would want to write it in simplest form if we were going to do that. Griffin? 3. That's not a fraction yet. 3 over 1. 3 over 1, right? Because anything divided by 1 is itself. So 3 divided by 1 is equal to 3, right? So as a fraction, it's the value of 3. Give me another integer, this time one negative. Let's be negative for a second here. John? -4 as a decimal. Jeffrey? -4.0 as a fraction. Abby? -4 over 1. So converting integers, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, as a decimal, just add a 0.0. As a fraction, 3 over 1. Again, we would rarely do this. We'll get to writing as fractions later on when we start talking about slope. But for decimals, that's how you would do it there. Okay, time for the fun stuff now. Fractions to decimals. I'm going to scroll down a little bit because I want both of these things on kind of the same page here. So fractions to decimals. Let's start with something like 2/5. Okay. How would I write that fraction as a decimal? Who remembers from last year, maybe even back to 5th grade, how you do this? Lexi? So let's say that you don't have a calculator and you're not quite sure what 2 divided by, that would be a way to do it. But let's say you don't have a calculator, not quite sure how to divide 2 by 5 longhand. That's a little shaky. What's another thing you could do, Haley? And why 20? Why multiply by 20? Right. To convert a decimal, or to convert a fraction to a decimal without a calculator, we want to rewrite it with a denominator of 100. That's kind of your key here. That 100 is your key. And as Haley said, in this case, to get from 5 to 100, we multiply by 5 or by 20, which you then also do to the numerator, which gives us 40 hundredths. Now, this isn't a decimal yet, so we're not quite done. But how do we write that as a decimal? Camille? 0.4 or 0.40. Either one is fine, right? But it's 40 hundredths as how you would read that decimal. Okay? Let's do another fraction. Let's do, oh boy, how about 17/25. Ugh. Ugh. All right. Abby, what's our first step here?
I know you multiply 25 times 4 to equal 100.
Right.
So that would have to be 17 times 4.
Yeah. Remember, 100 is your key here, right? When you've got a fraction with a denominator of 100, life is good. Okay? Life is good. And then because we multiplied the denominator by 4, we also multiply the numerator by 4, and 17 times 4, quick maths, 68. 17 times 4, 68. Doesn't matter. It's all good. Okay? Still on a decimal, though. What is our decimal value here? Let's get someone we haven't heard from yet. A new voice today. A new voice. Kylie. Good. 68 hundredths would be 0.68 is how you read that decimal. Griffin.
What if you have a fraction that's not unit times to get to 10?
We'll talk about that later on. Right now, we're dealing with what are called friendly denominators because they all work out evenly. But if you didn't have one, then you could either estimate or just use a calculator, divide it longhand. But these mental ones, common fractions. What if you had something like a mixed number? Like let's say we had 1 and 3/10. How would you write that as a decimal? 1 and 3/10, Cade?
Don't you have like 1 times 3 plus 10?
To turn it into an improper fraction? So you could turn it into an improper fraction first. Or what else could you do, Wyatt?
Just take the 1 off and put it later.
Yeah, that 1 represents how many holes you have, right? You have 1 hole and then 3/10 more. So as a fraction, or as a decimal, it's going to be 1 point something instead of 0 point something. 1 point something. And then what is 3/10 as a decimal? We don't even have to go to 100 here because we already have a 10. And we like that. Abby?
1.3.
Yeah, 3 in the tenths place. So a mixed number like that just means you'll have a hole out in front. Not going to be 0 point. It'll be 1 point or 2 point or 3 point or whatever. Okay? Converting decimals to fractions is kind of just the opposite. Give me a decimal. to the hundredths place without any holes. So 0 point something something. Jeffrey.
0.72.
Sure. Okay. Now, another way to read that decimal other than 0.72 would be what? Griffin? 72 hundredths. 72 hundredths. 72 hundredths. Sounds an awful lot like a fraction, doesn't it, Liam? It does. Okay? It's kind of the opposite of what we just did up above. We've got that denominator of 100. Of course, now your last step would be to simplify here, because we always have to simplify our fractions. Just like you would never ask last year, Mrs. Gregory, do I have to end my sentence with punctuation? Of course you do. Do I have to simplify my fractions? Of course you do. What can we simplify 72 hundredths by? What can we divide by here? Yeah. 8 does not go into 100 evenly, so that's not going to work.
2.
Oh. We can start with 2. See where that brings us. 72 divided by 2 is 36. 100 divided by 2 is 50. Can we go further? What can we divide both 36 and 50 by? Haley? 2. That brings us down to 18/25. And is there any number that goes into both 18 and 25 evenly? No. So we're done. Okay. We could have gotten there in one step by dividing by 4, but dividing by 2 twice gets us the same result. We call that the scenic route. Okay. We still got there. Just took a little bit longer. All right. Let's try a decimal that is more than that has a whole. Let's do 2.11. How would you write 2.11 as a fraction? Now we've got some holes out in front there. Kylie? Yeah, we can write it as a mixed number. We could say 2 and 11 hundredths. Can we simplify 11 hundredths? No. So are we done? Yes. If you wanted to go to an improper fraction instead than a mixed number, what would that look like? Abby?
211 over 100.
Yep. 211 over 100, which there's no number that goes evenly into both 211 and 100, so that would also be considered in simplest form. I know probably in the past you were required to write your answer as a mixed number, not improper fractions. Is that true? Starting with pre-algebra and going forward, we actually use improper fractions more often, so mixed numbers kind of get left out. I feel bad for them, but not really. So, an improper fraction, as long as it's in simplest form, totally fine. Questions on this? Okay, your homework then. On the second page, you get to convert, it says integers to a fraction and a decimal. So that first one, that 18, you'd need to write both 18.0 and 18 over 1. Okay, integers get converted to both decimals and fractions. Otherwise, if it's a decimal, convert it only to a fraction. If it's a fraction, convert it only to a decimal. You'll notice that all of our denominators are friendly, meaning they'll go into 100 evenly. 4, 25, 25, 50, 10. Okay, so I need to see your work. Work must be shown. That's why I gave you so much space. I did not give you this much room just to write your answer really big. Okay? You need to show me how you got there, like we did on the front side. You still need to show the work though, Liam. Liam, I want you to hear this. I gave you the answer, yes, but you still need to show your work. Okay? You need to show your work. If something's negative, the process doesn't change. Only instead of a positive answer, it's going to be a negative answer. So don't get thrown off by those signs. Negative values don't really change here. Negative 10 is just going to be negative 10.0. Negative 10 over 1. Okay. The next section. Hold on, let me pause my view. Okay, the next section then, we'll clear this. It says match each fraction to its decimal value. So 3/10 is equivalent to what decimal on the right side? Haley? 0.3. So just draw a line right down to there. 9/20 is equivalent to which decimal on the right side? Wyatt?
445.
So draw a line there. Okay? And same thing in that second set. Here you're matching each fraction or each decimal to its fractional value there. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, compliments, or congratulations? For what? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, folks, that is How You Math.